The conference room was cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature, the kind that comes from glass walls and people who have already decided what you deserve. I sat across from Sterling and his 3 lawyers in their matching dark suits. One of the lawyers slid a single bank statement across the table. I looked at it. Then I looked again. The balance read $0. "The company is bankrupt, Claire," Sterling said. His voice was flat and smooth, like ice over deep water. "There is no alimony. No settlement. You get the house, but the bank is foreclosing on it tomorrow." I stared at him. 12 years. I had worked beside this man for 12 years, building Vanguard Logistics from a 2-person operation in a rented office into a company with 40 employees and 3 international contracts. I had also spent the last 8 months beside my dying father, missing everything. Apparently, Sterling had used that time very productively. I stood up to leave. That was when the young man sitting behind Sterling, his so-called consultant, knocked his bag off the chair. A small black device skittered across the floor. Sterling lunged for it with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Pure terror. I had $500 left in a personal account Sterling hadn't touched, probably because he forgot it existed. I used it to hire Elias Thorne. People who knew him called him the ghost hunter. He had spent 15 years at the SEC before going independent, with a reputation for finding money that other people were certain had disappeared. We met in a diner 2 blocks from the courthouse on a rainy Tuesday evening. Elias was quiet, mid-40s, with the kind of focused eyes that made you feel like he was reading a document even when he was just looking at your face. I slid the bankruptcy filings across the table. He looked at them for 5 minutes, then set them down and made a sound that was almost a laugh. "Your husband didn't lose this money in bad trades, Claire," he said. "He's been burning it. Making it look like losses while routing the funds into a private blockchain account." I felt something cold move through my chest. "How long?" Elias turned one of the pages over. His finger landed on a date. The transfers had begun 2 years ago, the day my father was admitted to the hospital. Sterling had started moving our money the moment he knew I would be distracted. Sterling had told the police the laptop was stolen during a burglary 14 months ago. He had filed an insurance claim and seemed genuinely upset. I remembered thinking he cared more about that laptop than the broken back window. I found it under a floorboard in the attic, wrapped in an old blanket. 14 months and it had never left the house. I brought it to Elias the next morning. He set it on his desk, opened it, and sat back. "It's not password protected," he said. "It's locked with a physical key, a UB key." A UB key was a small device that had to be inserted before any password would work. Without it, the machine was sealed. "Do you have any idea where the key might be?" Elias asked. I thought about it for a long time. Sterling didn't keep important things in obvious places, but he also didn't worry about what he considered unimportant. I thought about his routines. His habits. The things he was proud of but didn't pay close attention to anymore. Then I remembered his dog, Brutus, a show-winning German shepherd with a custom leather collar. Something small and silver always hung from it alongside the tags. Brutus went to Oakfield Dog Park every morning at 8 with Sterling's trainer, a young man named Freddie who wore the same green jacket regardless of the weather. I had always liked Freddie. He had no idea what Sterling was. I arrived at the park at 7:50 with a tennis ball and my most relaxed expression. Freddie recognized me and waved. I played with Brutus for a few minutes, scratching behind his ears the way he liked, and while he was distracted by the ball I unclipped his collar, slid the small silver key off the tag ring, and replaced it with a similarly sized house key from my keychain. The whole thing took 11 seconds. I refastened the collar. Freddie didn't look up once. I was halfway to the park gate, key in my palm, when a black car pulled up along the fence. Sterling got out of the passenger side. He didn't see me. I stepped quickly behind a group of people near the water fountain. My heart was loud in my ears. He wasn't alone. The consultant was with him. I couldn't hear everything, but 3 words came through clearly before a dog started barking and drowned the rest. Final transfer. Midnight. Elias inserted the UB key. The laptop opened. We sat together at his desk while he navigated through the hidden file partition, a secondary drive that didn't appear in the normal directory. There were spreadsheets, transfer logs, and a private ledger that Sterling had been maintaining himself, by hand, in a digital document. Every transaction was dated and labeled. Elias scrolled slowly and I watched the numbers grow. By the time we reached the bottom of the ledger, the total sat at $4 million. Sterling had moved $4 million out of Vanguard Logistics and into a single cryptocurrency called Aura. I had never heard of it. I asked Elias what it was. He leaned back in his chair and looked at me with an expression that told me the answer was going to be worse than I expected. Aura wasn't listed on any public exchange. It had no open market, no regulatory filing, no white paper. It was a private token used within a high-end offshore gambling network. A system designed to make funds untraceable by any court in any country. Sterling hadn't just hidden our money. Sterling had moved our money into a world where the law had no hands. Sterling's mother, Beatrice, arrived at the house the following afternoon with a casserole and a real estate agent she had not mentioned on the phone. She said she'd come to help me pack. She was polished the way old money tends to be, quiet about it, never needing to announce itself. She sat me down at the kitchen table, set the casserole to one side, and placed a document in front of me. It was a non-disclosure agreement. She pushed an envelope beside it. $10,000 in a cashier's check. "Sign this, take the money, and leave the state," she said pleasantly. "This situation has gone far enough. You're clearly not well, Claire. The stress has made you irrational, and you are embarrassing a great many people." I stared at her. Then I did something I had not planned. I stood up, walked around the table, and hugged her goodbye. Beatrice was not a warm woman. The hug was brief and stiff. But it lasted long enough for me to lower my phone behind her back and photograph the necklace she was wearing, a gold pendant with a small engraving on the reverse side. From my seat, I could see it was a QR code. Elias scanned the image on his laptop. The QR code resolved into a 44-character public key. The address for a digital vault, a high-security encrypted storage system used by people who needed to keep assets completely off the books. He sat very still for a moment after the scan completed. "This isn't just Sterling's money," he said slowly. "This vault has been active for 26 years. The Vance family has been hiding generational wealth from the IRS for 3 decades. We're not looking at $4 million anymore." He turned the screen toward me. The vault held substantially more than anything Sterling had taken from me. But what Elias showed me next was worse than the total. There was a transaction queue, a list of transfers scheduled to execute within the next 72 hours. Someone was actively emptying the vault. The transactions were being routed through the same Aura network Sterling used, through an account that did not belong to Beatrice. It belonged to Sterling personally. He was draining his family's money too. He was planning to disappear and take everything with him, including the fortune Beatrice believed was safely locked away with her son as the trusted guardian. Sterling was not just stealing from me. He was stealing from his own mother. I followed Mia to the Northgate Technology Gala on a Thursday evening. I had assumed she was a junior employee, some ambitious young woman Sterling had recruited for legitimacy. I was wrong on every count. I watched her move through that room. She knew everyone. She spoke the language of developers and blockchain architects with easy fluency, and 3 separate people introduced her to others as a systems designer. Elias had spent 2 days quietly pulling her professional history. She had graduated top of her class from a technical institute in Zurich, had filed 4 patents related to distributed ledger architecture, and had no listed employer for the past 3 years. She was not a consultant. She was the person who had built the Aura network. She was also, clearly, more than a professional contact to Sterling. I watched them in the corner of the room, close together, and I heard her clearly over the ambient noise of the party. People were clustered near the bar and the room had gone temporarily quiet in a wave. Once the final 2 million hits the Aura wallet, Mia said to Sterling, her voice low and certain, we disappear. Claire can have the debt. I almost missed the debt entirely because I was so focused on the stolen assets. Elias found it on a Saturday morning and called me before I had finished my first coffee. His voice had none of its usual dry calm. Sterling had been using DeFi lending platforms, decentralized lenders outside any regulatory body, and had taken out loans against collateral he didn't own. The loans were in my name. The signatures authorizing them were mine, digitally. I told Elias I had never signed anything of the kind. He said he knew. He sent me a photograph. 2 years ago, Sterling had given me an anniversary gift, a digital pen, one of those sleek styluses used for signing tablet documents. He said it was because I was always losing regular pens. I had used it hundreds of times, for invoices, for delivery confirmations, for birthday cards to his family. Every signature I had ever made with that pen had been captured. Sterling had used it against me, one copy at a time, to take out $5 million in loans now sitting in my name. If the cryptocurrency market dropped significantly, which it was already beginning to do, I would personally owe $5 million to a lender with no address and less mercy. I came home to my small rented apartment on a Wednesday night to find the door unlocked. The inside looked like someone had searched it with no particular interest in hiding the fact. Drawers were pulled out. The closet had been emptied onto the floor. My bookshelf was knocked sideways. On the kitchen counter there was a note written in Sterling's handwriting, "Give it back, or I'll tell the court you're a thief." He meant the laptop. He had realized it was gone from the attic. What Sterling did not know, what I had decided 3 days earlier without telling anyone, was that I had not gone to my apartment that evening. I had arrived, seen the light on inside through the window, and let myself in quietly through the back entrance. I was in the bedroom closet the entire time, phone raised, recording. I had 6 minutes and 40 seconds of Sterling moving through my apartment, pulling open my belongings, muttering to himself. He knocked over my father's photograph on the nightstand and didn't pick it up. That was the moment I stopped feeling anything for him. I pressed stop on the recording. Then I sat very still on the closet floor and waited for the front door to close. My lawyer, a sharp-edged woman named Petra Hollis, watched the 6-minute video 3 times without saying a word. Then she picked up her phone and called the courthouse. 2 days later we had an emergency hearing. Sterling showed up in his best gray suit with 2 of his lawyers and the smooth, unbothered expression of a man who had done nothing and could prove it. He told the judge he had simply gone to retrieve property that was legally his. He was calm, reasonable, almost sympathetic. The judge watched the video. In it, Sterling could be seen going through my medical documents, tipping over my father's photograph, and reading a private letter I had written to my sister but never sent. The judge ordered an immediate temporary freeze on all of Sterling's known assets, his accounts, his listed properties, his vehicles. Sterling's expression did not change. I watched his face carefully because I knew what he was thinking. He was thinking the same thing I would have thought a month ago: none of this touches the Aura wallet. The court didn't know it existed. It wasn't in any filing. It wasn't attached to any name the judge had ever seen. He smiled very slightly on his way out of the courtroom, and I let him. Elias called me at 2 in the morning. He had set up a monitoring script on the Aura network, not inside it but watching the edges, tracking patterns in the surrounding public blockchain data. "He's moving," Elias said. Sterling was attempting to route the 4 million through a tumbler, a service that took cryptocurrency and returned it in small, mixed, completely untraceable fragments across hundreds of anonymous wallets. Once it went into the tumbler it was genuinely gone. No court, no auditor, no agency would ever find it. We had a narrow window. "Can we block the transfer?" I asked. Elias was quiet for a moment. "We can redirect it," he said. "But to do that, I need to authorize a counter-transaction from inside Sterling's Aura account. The wallet uses biometric security, Face ID. It has to be his face, while he is actively logged in." I sat with that for a moment. Sterling's face. His phone. Him logged in and present. We needed all three simultaneously. "I know where he'll be Saturday night," I said. I had received the invitation 3 weeks ago and had almost thrown it away. The Vanguard Logistics Anniversary Gala. Black tie. Sterling would be there because Sterling was always where the cameras were. I wore the black dress I had bought for our 5th wedding anniversary and never worn again after that night. I arrived at the gala alone. Sterling saw me from across the room, and for just a moment his composure slipped. He looked genuinely startled, which was the only satisfaction I allowed myself before I crossed the floor toward him. I told him I wanted one last dance. For closure. He looked at me with the careful eyes of a man trying to calculate the risk and deciding it was minimal. He took my hand. We moved to the edge of the dance floor. I rested my left hand on his shoulder and held my phone in my right, angled upward, the way someone might hold it to take a casual selfie over their own shoulder. I was not taking a selfie. Elias had walked me through the exact angle required. Sterling's Aura app had to see his face from the front, while the app was open, while the account showed an active session. I had opened the app on the hardware wallet in my clutch 30 seconds before asking him to dance. I needed 14 seconds of his face clearly in frame. I counted silently while we turned slowly across the floor. I stepped off the dance floor and went straight to the coat check. In the small side corridor, I opened the encrypted message channel Elias and I were using. I sent him the capture. 3 minutes passed. 4. I watched the door at the end of the corridor. My hands were completely steady, which surprised me. Then Elias sent 2 words, "Done." Redirected. The $4 million that Sterling had been routing toward the tumbler had been intercepted mid-transfer and diverted into a regulated escrow account held by Elias's forensic firm, a legal holding account, fully documented, time-stamped, and tied to my divorce case. It was untouchable by Sterling and visible to the court. 40 seconds later, I heard it. A sound I recognized from across the room, the specific sharp alert tone Sterling had set on his phone for financial notifications. He was still on the dance floor. I watched him pull out his phone. I watched his face change. He looked at the screen. He looked up. His eyes found me across the room with a precision that felt like a physical thing. I smiled at him. The same small, careful smile he had given me outside the courtroom 2 weeks earlier. Then I turned and walked toward the exit. He caught me in the coat room. The party noise from the main hall was muffled by the heavy curtain across the doorway, and we were completely alone. Sterling was not the man I had met at a logistics conference 12 years ago. That man had been charming and careful and good at seeming trustworthy. The person standing in front of me now looked stripped of all of that. His face was tight. His voice, when he spoke, was controlled in a way that required visible effort. "Reverse it," he said. "Reverse the transfer tonight, and I will make this easy for you. Refuse, and I will take everything, your reputation, this case, and Owen." Owen was our son. He was 11 years old and had already been through more disruption in the past year than most children experience in a lifetime. I felt the threat land. Sterling knew where to aim. I looked at him for a long moment. "Owen isn't at home," I said. "He's been at Petra Hollis's office since this afternoon." I let that settle. "He's giving a statement about the men who came to our house last spring. The ones you sent to move the hardware drives. Owen saw them. He remembered them very well." Elias called me the next morning with the kind of steadiness in his voice that meant the news was large. "The $4 million was a decoy," he said. "A distraction." He had kept the monitoring script running overnight. What it found beneath the visible aura transfers was a second, deeper account, a secondary wallet connected to Vanguard Logistics' fuel billing system. For at least 4 years, Sterling had been inflating the fuel invoices for Vanguard's shipping fleet by a small but consistent percentage. The overcharges were routed through a layered shell company structure into aura and then out again into clean currency. The total was not 4 million. It was closer to 14. And the money had not all been going to Sterling. Some of it, a significant portion, moved in regular, carefully timed transfers, had been going to a shipping consortium with routes through 3 countries known for cargo irregularities. "This isn't a divorce case anymore," Elias said. He didn't say what it was instead. He didn't have to. I sat at my kitchen table looking at the number on my screen. Somewhere in the city, the people who had been receiving those transfers had just noticed that the payments had stopped. His name was Noel. He arrived at my apartment door on a Monday evening wearing a courier jacket and holding a package I had not ordered. He asked me to confirm my name. When I did, he put the package down and told me, in the same pleasant tone, that he represented the parties who owed a significant sum and that they believed I had taken it. He wasn't threatening. He was stating facts. I told him very calmly that I had not taken anything, that the money trail he was following led not to me but to the man who had been funneling those payments in the first place, and that if his employers wanted their money back, I was the only person currently in possession of evidence showing exactly where it had gone. He looked at me for a moment. He wasn't used to this response. I opened my laptop and turned it toward him. I showed him Sterling's private ledger. Specifically the section that recorded the planned exodus, the flight bookings, the new identity documents, the offshore account in a country with no extradition treaty. Sterling had never planned to keep paying them. He had been building toward disappearing for at least 18 months. Noel gave me 24 hours. His employers wanted their money. They did not care about justice or divorce courts or forensic auditing. They cared about $14 million and they were, as he put it with gentle understatement, not patient people. Working with him was not a situation I would have chosen in any version of my life I had previously imagined. But the alternative, 24 hours of doing nothing while Sterling completed the secondary transfer and vanished, was worse. Elias and I spent the night building a recovery map, a documented pathway to freeze every remaining wallet connected to the Aura network that Sterling controlled. Noel's employer had access to certain private channels that Elias could not reach. The arrangement was uneasy but functional. By 4 in the morning we had a plan that could work. Then my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered it. It was Sterling. He told me that what I was doing was extremely dangerous, and that I should be aware that he had already been in contact with federal agents about the cartel's activities. He was using the word cartel the way a man uses the word when he is hoping the people on the other end of the line get arrested or killed in the process. The raid happened at 6:17 in the morning. I was in the parking structure of a Vanguard facility on the east side, a building I knew well because I had helped design the access system. Noel's contact had chosen it. Agents came in from 3 directions simultaneously. Noel's people scattered immediately. I moved differently. I knew the building. I went down 2 floors through a service corridor I had approved, through the basement laundry area, and out through a linen chute that deposited me in a loading bay 2 buildings east. It was inelegant. My jacket was ruined. But I came out on the right side of the police line. I stood in the cold morning air catching my breath and tried to think clearly about what had just happened. The FBI didn't raid meetings by accident. Someone had called them. Sterling had called them. He had hoped to solve his Noel problem and his Claire problem at once, in one building, at 6 in the morning. I was going through that thought when the agent who appeared at my side, the one who grabbed my arm and showed me his badge, was not someone I recognized from the raid. He had arrived from the opposite direction. Separately. Quietly. He drove me to a warehouse on the industrial waterfront. He didn't take me to a station or read me my rights. He sat me in a metal chair, placed a legal pad on the table, and told me his name was Agent Caro. Then he told me he wanted the Aura wallet keys. He was polite about it. Professional. The kind of polite that comes from someone who has decided they don't need to be anything else yet. I looked at the legal pad. I looked at the warehouse around me. Then I thought about something Elias had built into the wallet the night we first redirected the funds. He had called it a dead man's switch. Every hour, the wallet required me to enter a short confirmation code via text message. If I missed a window, if I failed to respond for more than 60 minutes, the system would automatically file the full wallet contents as a voluntary tax disclosure directly to the IRS, with a complete transaction history attached. I had missed the last window 40 minutes ago. I had 20 minutes remaining. I told Agent Caro, clearly, exactly what would happen in 20 minutes if I didn't send that code. I watched his professional politeness develop a crack in it. The crack widened fast. Agent Caro stood up. He looked at his phone, then at me, then sat back down. He was deciding whether I was bluffing while a clock ran that he couldn't stop or verify. I let him sit with it for 90 seconds. Then I told him the rest. I told him that Elias Thorne had a complete package of evidence. The laptop data, the transfer logs, the ledger, the forged signatures, the DeFi loans, the secondary wallet, the fuel invoice fraud, and the flight records showing Sterling planned to leave the country within 72 hours. All of it was in a sealed folder held by Petra Hollis, set to be filed with the federal court the following morning regardless of what happened to me. I also told him that if he helped Sterling walk away, the evidence package included a full account of his involvement. Every communication, every meeting. I said I would give him enough clean, documented cryptocurrency from the recovered funds to make the last 2 years of compromised decisions worth forgetting. It was a complete bluff. I had no authority over those funds. But I said it as though I had been planning it for months, and he believed me. Elias had been digging for 10 weeks by the time he found the Genesis block. The very first transaction in the chain, the original seed from which Sterling's entire hidden network had grown. It was dated the week after my father's funeral. The amount matched exactly, $240,000, moved in a single transfer from a life insurance policy under my father's name. My father had named me as sole beneficiary. I had never seen a payment. Sterling had intercepted the claim, used a power of attorney I had signed during a difficult week in the hospital, and redirected the entire payout before I knew it existed. That was bad enough. Then Elias showed me the cause of death amendment. My father had been expected to live for several more months. He had been declining slowly and then, in the space of a single night, he had not been. The original death certificate listed cardiac arrest. There was a second document in the insurance file, a supplementary medical form required for accelerated payout claims. Sterling had signed it. He had signed a document that described a different timeline. A faster one. My hands were unsteady when I put the laptop down. There was a nurse named Adiz who had been on duty the night my father died. I had thanked her at the time. She had been kind and had held my hand in the corridor outside his room. I found her through the hospital volunteer network and asked her to meet me for coffee. She came to the cafe looking like someone who had been waiting to be asked a question for 2 years. She had been in and out of my father's room that night. The monitors had been stable at 10:30. At 11, she had stepped away to answer a call at the nurse's station. When she returned at 11:12, the monitors were reading differently. Sterling had been in the room. She had not thought much of it at the time because families were in and out constantly. She had thought something, a small, uncomfortable thing she had pushed down because she had no proof and no language for it. She did have something, though. She reached into her bag and placed a small yellow box on the table. It was a disposable camera. She told me she had gotten into the habit of photographing rooms when she felt uneasy, just for her own peace of mind. She had never developed this one. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in a courtroom I had been in 6 times before. Sterling arrived with 2 lawyers and Agent Caro, still playing his original role. Sterling looked like a man who had already been told how this would go. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Petra Hollis and let him have that feeling for as long as it lasted. Petra presented the Genesis block data first, the insurance theft, the forged power of attorney, the accelerated payout. Then she presented the hospital photographs from Adi's developed disposable camera. The images were dark and slightly blurred in the way of old film. The shapes were clear. A man. My father's bed. A pillow held in a way that had no neutral explanation. Sterling's lawyer stood to object. Then the courtroom door opened. Agent Caro walked in from the back. Sterling turned in his chair, and for the first time, I watched his face do something it had never done in 12 years of our marriage. It showed genuine, unmanaged fear. Caro had not come in to support him. He had come in with 2 other agents and a set of documents and a pair of handcuffs, and he walked past Sterling's table without looking at him. Sterling was still talking when they led him out, explaining loudly that the money was his, that he had built everything, that none of us understood. No one appeared moved. The Aura wallet was liquidated over the following 6 weeks. The recovered funds, after legal fees and the repayment of the fraudulent DeFi loans, left enough to pay off the foreclosure entirely. I kept the house. I set aside a protected trust for Owen. Beatrice was dealing with her own federal correspondence. Mia was located in Portugal 3 months later and extradited. Noel's employers recovered what they were owed and provided testimony that closed evidentiary gaps in the government's case. Elias sent me a bottle of good wine and a note in his neat, precise handwriting. Never did find a ghost that wasn't real. I set the note on my new desk. I had registered the firm the week before, Forensic Vanguard, dedicated to finding assets that other people were certain had disappeared. I was still thinking about that when a notification appeared on my phone. Someone had attempted to transfer 1,000 Aura coins to my private address. The attached message was 4 words. Sterling wasn't the boss.